taking a step back and saying, what is the signal strength that we're sending out across all of these initiatives that we're doing? And basically, the weaker ones don't qualify for your energy and effort anymore, and the stronger ones are the things you really want to try. You create room to be able to do those.
Welcome to the official CultureCon podcast, where we explore how work actually works.
We're your hosts, Zach Blumenfeld
and Nick Lombardino.
Whether you're leading a team, shaping culture, or just passionate about making work more meaningful, you're in the right place.
Each episode will bring you stories, insights, and bold ideas from people who are building better workplaces and better work experiences.
The official CultureCon podcast starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of the CultureCon podcast, and today we're joined once again by our dear friends Pete Savage and Greg Livings, the two co-founders of Culture Shape and the co-authors of the Culture Wheel Playbook, which has become such a huge hit within our culture geek community. And in the book, the two of you talk really early on about what you call culture signals. And that term is then used throughout the entire book. So can you talk to us a little bit about what culture signals are and why they're fundamental to everything you talk about in the book?
Yeah, for sure, Nick. Thanks for having us back. Culture signals, definitely. That's chapter 2 of the book, but it really flows all the way through. It's a fundamental concept. And whenever I'm asked to explain what that is, I like to use an example of the best explanation of signals that I've ever really come across. And it came from a book by Rory Sutherland, who's a marketing exec at Ogilvy, UK. And his book is called The Surprising Power of Ideas That Don't Make Sense. And he actually talks a lot more about human behavior in the book than he does about marketing. But he tells a story that really nails what signaling is. He tells a story of driving to work on a busy road, and he would always pass at the side of this road, a restaurant, and the restaurant never seemed to do well, which kind of stood out as funny to him because it was a high traffic area, and it changed ownership a few times, I think 3 or 4 times, and each time the new owners, they kept more or less the same menu. They changed the advertising, they changed the branding, they did kind of all the traditional things that you would try and do to drum up interest in business, and one after another, these restaurants just closed. So eventually you would conclude, well, this, for whatever reason, just isn't a great location for a restaurant. And then the last ownership change, the new owners did something very different than all the prior ones. And what they did worked so well to actually take this place from a neglected, ignored restaurant to a very busy and successful place. And, you would think that maybe they did some viral social media or hit on the right marketing campaign. But what they actually did was they made a unconventional change, something you might not think is important, but they changed the patio decor, the outdoor patio decor that you could see from the roadway of the restaurant. And the way Sutherland explains it in his book is he says, prior to this, the previous owners had all had the same indoor-outdoor type furniture. So permanent, heavy, outdoor, concrete benches, tables, basically outdoor furniture that can withstand any sort of weather, heavy enough that it wouldn't get stolen, and kind of appropriate for outdoor use. But the new owners came in and changed all that. They put high quality, essentially indoor furniture on the outdoor patio. And so that would require table settings, plate settings, and then, of course, setting up and tearing down, actually bringing in the entire patio furniture at the end of the night and then setting it all up again the next morning. And he said because he's attuned to these things and kind of values what are the changes that stimulate changes in human behavior, he noticed that that was a strong signal, and it actually did 2 things to turn around the trajectory of this business location. The first thing it did was it was a signal to everyone that, first of all, just formally, fundamentally, we're open. We're open for business. If we're putting expensive, good quality patio furniture outside, you know that we're open because we're inside and we're ready to welcome customers. So that was number one. But number two, it basically sent a really important subconscious message that said it was the restaurant sending a signal saying, look, we're investing in your experience here as a customer. We believe in the experience that we can offer here, and we're putting our effort and our money behind that so that we can demonstrate that to you kind of before you even set foot in here. And it was a super strong signal because it made people think, well, geez, if they're going to this much trouble to take care of the patio, they're putting that much time and care and effort into the general ambiance of the patio and going to the trouble and expense of setting it up and tearing it down every night, then what must the food be like? They must be putting the same level of care in the food and the eating experience. And that was enough to change people, to change their behavior from basically ignoring that restaurant to pulling in and patroning it and turning around the fortunes of that place. So I love that story because it's not what the restaurant owner, or if we put ourselves in that position, it's not what we might have been thinking to do that would get the result that we're looking for from an audience or a community. It's something unconventional. And I just think that parallels so well in a people and culture environment inside an organization, which is, you may be arriving into a people and culture role. There may be programs and initiatives that are ongoing that you kind of inherit that you need to continue or want to run, or maybe you're putting some new initiatives together. So you might do what occurs to you as, what should be part of that culture programming. But oftentimes we like to encourage people to just take a step back and look at the programs and initiatives that you're doing, not in the specifics of what they are, but as to what sort of signal it's sending. And if you just start to look at things through that lens, you can then start to determine, some signals are weak and some signals are strong. Some programs come across as just everyday run-of-the-mill things we're doing, but any organization could do this for their employee base. And some are more innovative and unique. And, some may require a higher investment, some may not. But just taking a step back and saying, what is the signal strength that we're sending out across all of these initiatives that we're doing? And basically, the weaker ones don't qualify for your energy and effort anymore. And the stronger ones are the things you really want to try. You create room to be able to do those.
I love that. Yeah, it's like you're doubling down on those strong signals. And when you say signal, one signal that I know Culture Shape and the two of you have really helped us bring to life is those CultureCon journals that were all handed out at the last event and going to be handed out in Vegas. And it was definitely a highlight. Like I saw a lot of people on LinkedIn posting those journals, and it was cool because like right inside you open it up and there's real estate there to showcase our values and our story. And amplifying that signal, I think a step further was this year we personalized those journals. And just like I was by the registration table when people would come and pick up their journal, and they were so surprised, like blown away that they would get a journal personalized with their name on it. And that was such a nice touch to see those smiles and people talk about them and posting on LinkedIn and the impact that makes, and just kind of taking a signal, doubling down and kind of learning from that, and, taking those strong signals and keep pushing forward on those. And it's a big payback. And, Culture Shape is making that happen across hundreds of different attendees, hundreds of different people at the event. And each one has their own kind of individual moment when they get handed that journal. And it's such a high impact culture signal that you help deliver at the conference. And with the culture signals being so important, can you talk about like how those culture signals play into the core concept of your book and I have it right here. It's right on my desk because I love it. The Culture Wheel Playbook. So, yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about how those signals play into the core aspect of your book, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. And just before that, let me just give a client story actually about signals and kind of what that looks like inside an organization. So, as you mentioned, Zach, thanks for those kind words about the working journal. What is a strong culture signal? Well, it's really anything the organization delivers to its employees, whether it's physical, like the journals you mentioned, or digital, but it's anything that gets delivered to engage or appreciate or encourage or educate or incentivize the workforce, our people internally. And so when you start to think about it in that kind of definition, it's like there's almost no example or context when you think about it in that term that a people and culture team shouldn't at least have their eyes on, but maybe actually own or begin to own, because of those signals that are going out from the organization. You want to make sure that they're aligned with and kind of driving the culture forward. And I think that's a great opportunity right now for the people in the culture space, is to just take an inventory of what are all the signals that are sending out and how can we evaluate them? How can we influence them? And just a quick example of how those improvements can be made. And in some cases, save a lot of money being spent on weaker signals is one example that comes to mind. We had a client in the insurance industry with about 1,000 employees and an executive in charge of the culture function. And she began talking to us and talking about some of the challenges that they were facing. And one of the biggest problems that she articulated was that they were noticing a big drop in usage on their employee rewards marketplace. So the employee store, basically, there had been a drop off. They had used it for rewards and things like that. And so the knee-jerk kind of reaction was, okay, big priority, we need to get that usage up. We've invested in this platform and we want to kind of reverse this curve of declining interest. And so we talked about a few things, and before we put any sort of plans in place, we revisited that and I think helped the team understand that the decline in usage of something, whether it was the employee rewards marketplace or anything else, it's kind of an indication from the workforce that signal isn't really resonating well. And maybe it did initially, or maybe it did a couple of years ago, but maybe in this particular example, once everyone has cashed in their rewards and gotten the coffee maker, gotten the wireless vacuum, whatever it is that they're using in those point stores, if it's dropping off, it could very well be an indication that it's just not landing anymore. So we just help them dig deep into that before funneling all the budget back in towards promoting and messaging and product inside the store to kind of get the usage up. And what we helped them understand was that there was actually kind of a gap or a misalignment in cultural and strategic messaging within the organization. And so basically using you mentioned the culture wheel, that's exactly what we did, Zach, is we built a program for them using the culture wheel to help them say, okay, how can we take the funds that we were going to direct into this and put basically a calendar of strong signals together using some of the examples that we've done, for CultureCon, for recognition, for workbook journals, things like that. And long story short, at the end of the day, with about 1,000, I'll give some numbers just to help contextualize it for everyone, with about 1,000 employees at around a $200 investment level per employee, we were able to put together an entire year's worth of culture programming for around $200,000. And comparing that to what was set to be invested into the marketplace store, which could be approaching $500 per employee, we were able to just take those funds and put a year's worth of programming together. And it all started with just looking at the strength of the signal and insisting that no, anything we plan or invest in or want to try. You have to try things. You may not always get things 100% right, but anything we want to try, we want to have a confidence level that this is a strong signal, we think, and we know the reasons why we want to invest in it.
Yeah, I love that because it's also, you talk about numbers, and it's so easy to scale that up and down too. If you have a team of 10, if you have a team of 1,000 like you're talking about, and putting budget behind that to make, a year-round program around that strong signal that you found. So that's really awesome.
One point on that particular customer is you're taking, and I want to just reiterate what Pete was talking about as far as the problem was. They thought the problem was, we don't have enough spend here. And it was just in your face that people didn't want that spend. So we just took a fraction of that and put it into a whole year's worth of programming. I think just getting off that idea that this woman wanted to fill the buy up. That was her concern, getting the spend up, and no tracking of what is this signal doing? What is it doing for us? And I like to talk about the culture signals and the culture wheel, because these are just two basic tools that we like to use. And when you understand culture signals and the culture wheel, you've got what you need to plan and execute your entire culture program. Culture signals, I'm going to just recap this. Anything the organization delivers to its employees to engage, appreciate, encourage, educate, incentivize, either physical or digital, is a culture signal. The culture wheel is just a simple 12-month circular planning calendar. You see it on our cover. The graphic of that is simple. The wheel takes shape by simply plotting your strongest signals on the wheel with when they take place and a bit of detail about where that work starts and stops. And this simple visual just becomes it's a super tool. It's a super powerful communication tool that makes it easy to share. The culture team would say, here's what we're doing in culture in one simple graphic. Or here's what we are working on right now, looking at whatever initiative that is. So it just keeps the internal teams, management, execs, other partners, HR, marketing, external stakeholders, people who help plan, keeps everybody in the loop on what is going on with culture. Where is the plan? It resides on the wheel, and that easy visual just becomes the tool that people use to show what they're doing. It ties back to signals. And just one thing I want to say about signals, 2 questions, and we cover this in the book. A signal is, here's a question for, why are we spending money on this? And the second part is, what's the payback on that spend? Which ties back to pathway to profits. I mean, it's all legitimizes basically what the culture team is there to do.
We want to give a quick thank you to our friends at Culture Shape. They're really helping people and culture leaders design and deliver higher impact programs through a single source.
Yeah, and one of the things I love is their culture wheel. It's a 12-month visual calendar that makes it easier to plan, organize, and communicate culture programs across the whole organization. It's a simple way to get stronger buy-in and support.
And right now we got a really cool promotion for our CultureCon podcast listeners. You can get 50% off a one-on-one 4-week online consulting program with Pete Savage, Culture Shape's CEO. These spots are limited, so if you're interested, head to cultureshape.co/CultureCon to grab your place. Love how the culture wheel serves as this powerful, not only visual representation, but a planning mechanism where you're able to plot out, let's just say, like the most powerful heartbeats of these culture signals. Then you get to the point of like, okay, but how is this realistically applied within organizations? And Pete, you had brought up budget earlier with the client example you had. I think it came out to being like $200 per employee was the investment that went into that initiative. But like for the listeners out there who are maybe feeling like they need help with the practicality of how they get started with this and then the implementation, like what other pointers or best practices can you share?
Yeah, sure. I think as soon as you say practical, I want everyone's mind going to budget. It's just the language internally that you really want to get down within your team and be able to talk about externally. Everything we talk about is like, we're huge on the idea of when you're managing your culture team, or even if you're a culture team of one, you need to always be looking for ways to take what you're working on and share that, communicate internally to keep people informed. And the people that, of course, should be near the top of your list of keeping informed are those that are helping shape and fund the budgets. So, I always used to say, like, I spent a lot of years in the marketing industry. Marketing leaders were great at that. They were amazing at internal communication of, here's the next campaign, here's what's coming after it, here's what we're working on, here's the target market, here's the rationale, here's why we're asking for this much budget, here's why we're feeling like we're going to get this payback from it. Like, that kind of internal communication is always something that is necessary to be able to keep that funding and those resources available to be invested in your people and culture programs. So we always want to encourage that. And then I always just reiterate it with really, really simple math to just make it not intimidating, which is, well, using those numbers from the first example, a $200,000 budget for 1,000 people, that worked out to about 1/3 of 1% of that client's total salary expenses. So here's where you can just take some inputs and do easy, quick calculations is a couple rules of thumb. Find out your organization's total salary expense, multiply that by 0.25% or 1/3 in that range. We can say 0.25% to say 0.5%. And the digital, if you're using a calculator version of that, is just 0.0025 is 0.25%. So multiply that by your total company salary expense, not your payroll. Those are two different things, but your salary expense. And you're going to get a figure that's really easy to start justifying in terms of shaping and building a culture program around. And you don't need a multi-million-dollar slush fund of budget to be able to put some really strong culture signals together, an entire year's worth of it. If you're at, say, in this example, it was as an employee or 1,000 employee level, but as you said, it's scalable up or down. And if you can't get your handle on that number, then just take the total revenues of your organization and take this number. Listen to this one, 1/10 of 1%. So take 1/10 of 1% of your organization's revenues and work with that and say, can we build a year's worth of strong signals out of this budget? And you begin to frame this as an investment in your organization. So it's like, hey, we have, let's say, whatever it happens to be, $60 million worth of salary expense. Can we spend 1/3 of 1% to invest in keeping these people engaged, incentivized, helping reduce turnover, helping them align to the mission? Asking those kinds of questions, it's like, it's pretty hard to push back on those kinds of very small percentages internally. So having the kind of wherewithal and the courage to bring those conversations out into the light. And then, we even encourage it further and say, tie it to the sales. It's going to be an even smaller percentage. We're asking to be able to invest 1/10 of 1% or whatever the number is, 1/15. Like you work with that, but in preserving our organization's abilities to continue to generate revenues, like framing these budget conversations, these planning conversations in that context is going to help you get that buy-in and support, because it just makes logical business sense. So I would say that number one in terms of practicality is know your budget numbers, know what is feasible, logical. If you need help with that, we're always happy to help. These are kind of vanguard approaches to that. So we're always happy to help with kind of behind the scenes discussion to prep you or your team for that. And then the other thing I would say is to really, understand your people. Who are those internal stakeholders? Name them. If there's 4 or 5 people, that might include some board members or maybe the CEO or the CFO. Name these folks and have your culture team understanding these are the people we need to keep in touch with, bringing them on site, keeping them up to date, not just on budgeting, but on plans. The culture wheel is a great visual, easy, repeatable way to do that. So that's the internal team. And then the external team, and that's where people like Culture Shape can come in, is that eventually what you're planning needs to be delivered. And if you're ever going to try and scale culture programs, a lot of these programs are going to require, if not actual manufacturing and assembly and shipping and fulfillment and delivery and design, those are things that physically, for the most part, are going to take place by people external to your team and outside of your organization. So again, to take a page from marketing departments are really good at aligning with like-minded partners and relying on them to help them execute against their goals. And people in culture teams can do that and should have access to that kind of resourcing as well. And so that takes it off of, okay, we want to do, say, a recognition program. What's that going to look like? Who do we, where do we get the pieces to pull this off? Like, none of that. Planning in advance of who's on the team internally, externally, who can come to the table and help us plan and who can help us deliver, so that those last few moments of delivery, like you mentioned, Zach, when someone steps up and opens their package, gets their award on stage at a recognition event, looks at a workbook journal with their personalized name on it, you have the right team to execute those things and make those signals as high impact as possible.
This whole conversation has sparked this story that one of my friends went through at a company, and I won't name the company, but if you sort Glassdoor by worst ratings, they're probably up in the top 10 still. But it reminds me of the story he told me. He worked for the company for 5-6 years. And the first 3 years around the holidays, they would send out a holiday present, like a employee engagement or recognition package. And it was the same thing for the first 3 years he worked there. It was a mouse pad, coasters, and 1 or 2 other things that I'm blanking on. But every year he would get another mouse pad with the company logo on it and coasters with the company logo on it. And so he had a stack of mouse pads for every year that they sent the holiday package. So that's an example of a company who is not listening to signals at all, because it was an inside joke on all the Slack channels, and people would draw little funny faces on the logo on the mouse pads and put it in Slack. So I'm curious, taking that example, obviously a company who's not listening to signals, how do you measure a signal? How do I take a signal and know if it's working or not with my organization?
We put criteria for that in the book. We actually give an exercise, a really detailed exercise to assess signals. And we've got 7 criteria. You can just sit down with a piece of paper at your desk or put it up on the whiteboard and go through it with your team. But you're basically taking the inventory of all the initiatives you're doing, whether it's company town hall, pizza party, branded foam fingers, we're number 1. Maybe you're doing the journals or a culture cards program, recognition, everything. Get a long list. You're going to find probably north of 20 things that you're doing in some aspects. Whether the culture team specifically owns this or not, get them on the list. And then take your team through just questioning. There's 7 questions in the book. You can get the book online for free, but a few of the questions are basically, does this initiative communicate or promote the company mission or the values or the vision? The inside of the journal workbooks, for example, Zach, that you mentioned, do that. There's real estate dedicated inside the culture tool to communicate what needs to be communicated about the values and to have it kind of evergreen and in front of people. So some will score high on that. Some initiatives will score low. If you're doing the branded t-shirts, I love a t-shirt. Nothing wrong with that, but does it convey the culture messaging that you want front and center? So that type of a initiative would score a little bit lower. So there's 7 criteria. A couple more are, is this something personalized or customized? Can a competitor offer their employee group the exact same thing? That's a really revealing question. You know, the mouse pad, these awesome looking kits are great, but a lot of the pieces in there, any company could send out to any employee. So where's the unique cultural value in that program? And it goes beyond, it's got our logo and our colors. It goes way beyond that. These are questions you really got to sit down and wrap your arms around if you're wanting to, you know, increase the cultural or strategic merit of how you're spending that, those dollars. And then one more question would be, does this help an employee create or sustain a desired behavior? So if you do something like the culture cards, like custom-made card decks or the workbook journals, you can have prompts and checklists and frameworks and rituals inside pieces within the real estate that helps people coming back to a behavior change. That could just be as simple as reflection at the end of the day or the end of the week. I know you guys are big on reflection, so building that into a tool that encourages that. But if you go through that kind of a criteria of how do these score, and you can score these things really simply. You can just say yes or no, or you can give them a score of, say, 1 to 5 throughout all of the 7 criteria, and you'll get some really revealing data on, okay, we got a handful of weak signals here. We got some ones that are pretty strong. So before we do anything else, let's look at what are we planning to roll out next? Are any of these weak signals just automatically into our plan? And before we just go ahead with that, let's maybe reassess that. Are we going to want to be spending money on this for the 3rd year in a row? So that's kind of what I'd say for practical application of taking the concept of signals and working it into your strategic culture plan and operations.
And that is a critical first step for somebody that's wanting to get started, right? It's like before we're going to try and establish more buy-in for future investments towards culture-related initiatives. Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like the starting point is to do the inventory that you just described of what's being done currently, weighing that against the different criteria and having conversations and maybe to some extent debates with your team members on what carries the most value perhaps moving forward. So I guess the question is that a critical first step before you go to the executive team or whomever you need to petition for future investments? It's like, hey, this is what we're doing right now, and this is the heartbeat. These are the signals that we're seeing, and let that inform future initiatives that are then net new.
That's how it starts. A culture plan always starts with what you're doing. And I think that, like when Pete said, dig deep, dig deep where the money is being spent on, again, that thing we call signals. It's everything you deliver to an employee. And it's a huge thing. When you get down to costs, I look at it, what bang for our buck are we getting on culture here? Is this resonating? How deep does this go? Is this a one and done? There's all kinds of questions. Everybody's going to be different, but pulling things off your wheel and putting things on your wheel starts to become how you work the culture wheel or your plan. I have a point here about just an opportunity loss, but when you have a tool like this and you're looking at it like that, you have very capable people and partners, that are internal, external to execute on culture. But the initiatives and rollouts may not happen because everybody's a little bit in the dark on what's going on. So when you put a timeline, like we're looking at a 12-month timeline, everybody knows how fast a 12-month, calendar goes by, how fast a quarter goes by. So most of these ideas, when everybody's a little bit in the dark, your best ideas seem to go sideways. And this is almost the feedback we're getting right now, even at CultureCon, is lots of capable people, lots of capable partners. How do we pull it together so all these great things don't go sideways? And here we are 3 shows later talking about the same ideas. And It's getting the things that you're doing and spending money on, putting them on your wheel, talking about them, testing them. Are they working? Are they not? That's part of the plan in the wheel too. There's other points to the wheel on, hey, a measure, a remeasure, did we have a baseline with data? Maybe that's not what this wheel's doing. Every wheel is going to be different in how people measure it, but bang for your buck in culture spend is everybody's, I think, first question. We don't want to start something because we don't know if it's going to work, or here's what we're doing and it's kind of working. We don't know. So doing these discoveries on what are we doing? Who's delivering it? Is it a great experience? Like, I think this is what you take your signals through. And it's ongoing. Once you're in that wheel, our wheels turn from 12 months. Sometimes they'll go to 18 months. We want to look at this year and we're looking into next year. So good story. And this is just where the wheels fell off. A $1 billion tech company comes to us. I think we're probably 3 to 4 weeks before this event that they're going to celebrate a huge milestone. They're bringing 7,000 folks into town to celebrate and recognize this accomplishment. But the biggest problem the internal team had was the ability to communicate what they wanted to accomplish with their team. So everything they're doing wasn't getting any traction. The vendors they're bringing in, no one had full accountability. So the responsibility lands back into the lap of people in the company, where it's kind of either running off the side of their desk or they don't have the wherewithal to carry it out, or the partners. So after problems, compromises, and surprises, basically what happened was they couldn't do it. They came to a point was, we thought we could do this, but we can't. So time runs out, internal interest runs out, and nothing was done. So they had the event. 7,000 people came in to commemorate this recognition of 10 years. And they talked about the milestone, but at the end of the day, no one got anything to take home. So you have a major ball drop, what was going to be a fantastic opportunity for a signal, and it probably turned into a bad signal. I mean, very, very simple things that, it's all about the planning. These tools that we're putting in place, they are impactful. They do keep people on track. The ball drop on that is really opportunity lost. And that happens all the time.
I just want to underline the story Greg just told about that real world story where we saw like this huge opportunity for an organization to recognize their team kind of disappear. And it's like, if that team was using a tool as simple as a culture wheel, everyone who needed to be involved in this would have known about this months in advance, because everyone had a little visual calendar tool that gets updated at meetings or shared around, knowing, hey, we got this. What are we doing for this? Let's get people on board. But with the just not having a simple tool to be able to share and communicate and kind of keep people in the loop in a timely manner, as Greg said, these things went sideways. So it's like, if you want to have a big impact inside your organization as a people and culture champion, get a simple visual tool to keep people in the loop, and your team can work off of it, and you can share it among the executives and the rest of the stakeholders in your organization. It doesn't have to be the culture wheel, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a simpler and easier visual tool to do that. So we would encourage people to do that.
Yeah. And I just think back to that example, like what a wasted opportunity, and like just a missed signal. And you have something like a culture wheel, some kind of visual to keep everyone on the same page. And all 7,000 of those people are going to leave with some kind of gift or item or recognition, and it's going to be a way different experience. And I'm just curious, because you two in Culture Shape have made so many awesome creations over the years. Do you have a favorite, I don't know, recognition piece or award or piece that you put together that you want to share?
I'll describe. Greg could talk for hours. I'll do a real quick one without revealing any client. Is that there was a client, I don't even want to say the industry, but they talked about how focused they are on customer service, and in their this is a major organization, and in their TV advertising, their TV spots, they had someone behind a desk in these really kind of odd situations, but the concept was, we're always ready to help you with customer service. We're at the desk ready. And as part of the recognition in that organization, it was a actual desk to mimic the desk in the organization or in the marketing campaign that we made out of like bent metal and painted. Like, it was just really wicked. So you had like instant alignment between the outward facing marketing campaign and then the inward cultural piece of that. And that's another huge point we can talk forever on. If you can tie marketing and culture together, which is like this natural fit, then you're really kind of double down and like amplifying your vision and your strategy and your alignment with what the market sees and what is going on and being rewarded and recognized for internally.
Definitely. Well, we can attest to, how good you are at making those items and those gifts and recognition tools. I mean, through the journals we discussed, we also have the CultureCon Impact Awards that you beautifully designed for this year's inaugural event, speaker awards. I can go on and on. I still think back to standing at registration, just seeing all those smiles when attendees grab those journals and it says their name right on it. Just that personalization is super cool. So Pete, Greg, everyone at Culture Shape, thank you for the partnership and really just like leveling up our culture signals at CultureCon. I mean, it really has taken that to the next level. And to the listeners, if you're interested, definitely reach out to Culture Shape. They can help you identify those culture signals, probably provide some pretty cool items like we have at CultureCon as well. So definitely get in touch with Pete and Greg and Culture Shape. And that does it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. And Pete, Greg, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Zach and Nick. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this episode of the official CultureCon podcast.
If you got something out of it, share it with a friend, a teammate, or a fellow culture geek.
And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And if you want more ways to stay connected and inspired, check out our upcoming events page for a full listing of webinars, workshops, and conferences.
You'll find the link in the show notes, and we'd love to welcome you to a CultureCon event soon.
Until next time,